The cold wind whipped across the riverbank, carrying with it the distant sounds of traffic and the laughter of kids playing at a nearby park. But that laughter faded into the background when the scream tore through the air. It was sharp, frantic, a woman's voice. "Somebody, please. My dog. She's in the water." Everyone turned. Some froze. Some stepped closer to look. But no one moved fast enough. The small golden retriever, fur-soaked and eyes wide with panic, was being pulled downriver by the current. Her paws slapped at the surface in a desperate struggle. The leash had slipped from the woman's hand and tangled around the poor dog's hind legs, making her even more helpless. And then he ran. Ethan wasn't a firefighter or a trained lifeguard or anyone you'd expect. Just a 27-year-old man out for a quiet walk after a long shift at the hardware store. No one knew his name yet, but his body moved before his brain even caught up. Jacket hit the grass. Shoes flew off. He sprinted toward the riverbank as people shouted, some telling him not to go in, some calling for help. But he didn't stop. The water was ice cold. It shocked his body the moment he plunged in, his breath locking up in his lungs. For a few seconds, he couldn't hear anything but the pounding of his own heartbeat and the rush of water in his ears. Still, he pushed forward, eyes locked on the tiny head bobbing ahead. "You're okay," he gasped through chattering teeth, more to himself than to the dog. "Hang on. I'm coming." Onlookers gathered, phones raised, voices blending into a distant blur. The woman who had screamed was now on her knees, clutching her chest as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Please save her," she whispered, barely audible. Ethan swam with everything he had. Every stroke was a fight against the current. His arms felt like anchors. But slowly, inch by inch, he got closer. The dog was losing strength fast, slipping under for seconds at a time. Each time she went under, the panic in Ethan's chest surged. Finally, he reached her. One hand wrapped around the soaked collar while his other fought to keep them both afloat. The leash was twisted tightly around her back legs, cutting into her skin. "It's okay, girl. I got you," he murmured, teeth chattering uncontrollably. She didn't struggle. She just looked at him, tired, scared, but trusting. With numb fingers, Ethan tried to untangle the leash underwater, but it was tight, and he could feel the current pulling them further downstream. He wrapped one arm around her body and kicked harder. She whimpered softly, but her eyes never left his. Back on the riverbank, someone threw a rope. It landed short. Ethan didn't notice. All he could see was the terrified dog and the shoreline still too far away. His strength was fading. "Help!" someone yelled. "They're going under." But Ethan didn't yell. He just kept swimming, kept holding her up. And finally, when he felt like his muscles would give out, he saw it, a hand reaching out. A man in boots had waded into the river as far as he dared. "Pass her to me." Ethan used the last of his strength to lift the dog. The man grabbed her, pulled her toward the bank. The dog yelped but then went limp, safe in the stranger's arms. And then Ethan's arms gave out. He sank, just for a second. Then other hands grabbed him, pulling him to shore as his vision blurred. Cold. So cold. The last thing he saw before everything went black was the golden retriever licking the woman's face, her tail weakly wagging. Darkness. A silence deeper than water. To be continued. The world returned in fragments. Ethan gasped as air surged back into his lungs, each breath feeling like fire and ice all at once. Coughing violently, he blinked against the sunlight and the blur of faces leaning over him. A thick blanket was being wrapped around his shoulders. Somewhere nearby, a siren wailed, growing closer by the second. "He's awake. He's breathing. Thank God." The woman's voice cracked as she cried. Ethan turned his head slowly and saw her kneeling beside him, the golden retriever curled up in her arms. The dog was shivering but alive, eyes locked on Ethan like she understood everything. "You saved her," the woman whispered. "You saved my Daisy." Ethan tried to speak, but only a raspy breath came out. His entire body ached, muscles stiff, lungs burning, fingers frozen. A paramedic appeared in his field of vision. "Easy, sir. You took in a lot of water. We need to check your vitals. Can you tell me your name?" "Ethan," he managed to whisper. The paramedic nodded. "You're a lucky man, Ethan. And a brave one." They lifted him onto a stretcher, and as he was wheeled to the ambulance, the crowd that had gathered erupted in applause. Some clapped. Some cried. One older man wiped a tear from his beard and whispered, "We need more men like him." Inside the ambulance, Ethan fought to stay awake. His mind drifted, still playing back the dog's eyes, the struggle in the water, the leash wrapped tight around her. His teeth wouldn't stop chattering. "Keep him warm," the paramedic said. "Get fluids ready." As the ambulance sped off, the woman with the retriever watched them go, still holding her pet close. She didn't know his last name, where he lived, or what kind of life he led, but she knew this stranger had changed her life forever. At the hospital, Ethan spent the night under observation. The doctors were amazed at his resilience. No broken bones, no lasting injuries, just deep exhaustion and mild hypothermia. Nurses visited regularly to check on him, and more than one left the room with misty eyes after hearing what he had done. Late that evening, as the skies darkened and city lights blinked to life, the door to his room creaked open. It was her. The woman stepped in, cradling a bouquet of fresh flowers and leading Daisy on a leash. The dog immediately perked up and padded over to Ethan's bed, placing her head gently on the side. "I hope you don't mind," the woman said softly. "She's been restless since you left the park. She keeps looking for you." Ethan smiled weakly, lifting a hand to stroke Daisy's wet nose. "Hey girl, you doing okay?" Daisy gave a quiet bark, then licked his fingers. The woman moved closer. "I never got to introduce myself. I'm Laura. I was just visiting the park after my shift when Daisy broke away from me. She's usually so careful, but she got spooked by something and bolted." Ethan nodded slowly. "You don't have to explain. Dogs get scared too." Laura's eyes welled up again. "You almost died saving her. I don't know how to thank you." Ethan looked down at Daisy, then back at Laura. "You already did. You came back." Laura sat in the chair beside him, and for the next hour they talked. About the river, about Daisy, about life. He learned she was a nurse at the children's hospital. She learned he worked at a hardware store and lived alone, his closest family states away. It wasn't just a conversation. It was connection. Two people who never should have met, now bonded by a moment that could have ended in tragedy. By the time visiting hours ended, Laura hesitated at the door. "Can I come back tomorrow?" she asked, almost shyly. Ethan gave a tired grin. "I'd like that." She smiled and walked out, Daisy following behind. But not before the dog paused and looked back at Ethan one last time, her tail wagging. And for the first time that day, Ethan felt warm. But little did he know, the world outside had already begun to notice. The video of his rescue had gone viral. Millions had watched him dive into that icy river. People were calling him a hero. News vans were already lining up outside the hospital. And someone very important had taken notice. Someone who would soon offer Ethan a chance to change lives beyond just one dog. To be continued. The next morning began with bright sunlight pouring through the hospital windows and the low hum of reporters outside. Ethan stirred slowly, still sore, still tired, but awake. The nurse entered with a fresh bag and a warm smile. "You might want to check your phone," she said with a wink. "You're kind of famous now." Ethan blinked. "What do you mean?" She held up her tablet, showing him the headline on a major news site. Asterisk, stranger dives into freezing river to save dog. A real-life hero. Asterisk underneath, it was the viral video. Dozens of people had filmed his leap, his swim, and the dramatic moment he lifted the dog into another man's arms. "You've got millions of views. The mayor wants to meet you. Animal rescue groups are calling. People are offering to donate money in your name," she explained, a little breathless herself. "It's like the world needed something good, and you gave it to them." Ethan stared in disbelief. His phone, when finally handed to him, was flooded with messages. Texts from old friends, voicemails from reporters, social media tags piling up every second. Before he could even respond, the door opened again. Laura stepped in with a huge smile, and Daisy bounded over to him with far more energy than the day before. She placed both paws on his bed and nuzzled into his side. "She hasn't stopped asking for you," Laura said. Ethan laughed for the first time in days, ruffling the golden retriever's fur. "I guess I missed you too." Laura sat beside him and pulled out a folded letter from her bag. "This came to my apartment last night. I think it's meant for you." It was from an organization called Hope Hounds International, a well-known nonprofit that specialized in animal rescues across war zones, disaster areas, and remote regions. They had seen the video. They were inspired. They were offering Ethan a position as an emergency rescue coordinator, a chance to travel, help save animals around the world, and train others. "They said you have heart. They want to give you the skills," Laura read aloud. It's not just about dogs. It's about hope. Ethan stared at the letter, stunned. His world, once limited to shelves and aisles, was opening into something far bigger. Do you want to do it? Laura asked. He looked at her. At Daisy. At the light streaming through the window. I think I have to, he said. Not because I want to be famous, but because this matters. It's a second chance, and not just for me. Laura reached for his hand. Then we'll help you get there. In the weeks that followed, Ethan recovered quickly. News outlets continued to cover his journey. Donations poured into local shelters in his name. Hope Hounds finalized his training plans, flying him out to their international center once he was well. Laura was there every step of the way. She and Daisy even moved closer to the training facility so they could keep visiting. What started as a dramatic rescue had become something no one expected. A bond between three lives forever changed. Months later, in the heat of a devastated village hit by flooding in Southeast Asia, Ethan stood in waist-deep water coaxing a stranded dog from a rooftop. His shirt was soaked, his body aching, but his smile wide and real. He looked into the camera a journalist was holding. Every life matters. Sometimes, it takes just one act of courage to remind us we're all worth saving. Back home, Laura watched the footage on her tablet, Daisy curled in her lap. Tears filled her eyes. Because Ethan hadn't just saved a dog that day. He had saved himself. And in doing so, he had given the world a little more hope. The end.